Crank up the volume and get ready for real-world bird hunting by listening to the Wingmen Podcast by Eastmans. Now your host, Todd Helms.
This episode of the Wingmen Podcast is brought to you by Kryptek. Guys, I'm super stoked to be partnering with Kryptek, and I love the fact that I share the same ideals with them. I love the fact this company is veteran-owned, American hunter patriots. It's awesome. I also love the fact that they make top-notch hunting gear, and they offer it in killer camo patterns that are going to keep you concealed across a huge range of environments and conditions. So guys, if you're looking for more gear, get out there and check out Kryptek.
Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Wingmen Podcast. Got my man Scott Reekers on. He and I just got back from Montana on a turkey hunt. It was an absolute ball. We had a great time, and we're going to break down the ins and outs of that hunt. We're going to talk about, yes, we used an outfitter, and I'm going to explain why we did and the why we were so impressed and why you should be looking at that particular outfitter too for your next turkey hunt. But hey guys, before we get to that, I want to give a shout out to all the folks that make the Wingmen Podcast possible. We love shooting federal premium ammunition, and those 3-inch number 9 TSS turkey loads are absolutely wicked.
They rocked it on this.
Man, I've been hunting turkeys for about 35 years. I've shot it all, and it's just jaw-dropping devastation on that stuff. And so, in my mind, TSS is the best turkey load material there is, and Federal makes arguably the best turkey load out there. Really,
they kill it.
I really think so. They do an awesome job with it. And I don't care if you're shooting 410, 28, 20, 12, even 10 gauge. You don't make a TSS 10 gauge load. That would be unbelievable.
Remember that meme I just sent you?
You need to use a laser rangefinder to range him so you know how far he is. It'd be crazy. But anyway, guys, if you're looking for turkey loads, man, phenomenal stuff. The Kryptek patterns kill it. You know, we try to wear black when we're in the blinds. Yep. That Skyfall pattern works good in a blind because it's really, really dark. I wore the Highlander. Yeah. I usually wear the Typhon, their black pattern, in a blind, and it just hides you, man. But we knew we were probably going to be running and gunning as well as sitting in the blind, so I just took the Highlander, and it worked great because that early season dead vegetative environment, man, this brown Highlander, you just disappear.
I love the Highlander because it's really versatile no matter what and what type of hunt you're on. So if you're looking for a pattern that can work in any scenario, it's a great option.
I think so. Yeah, I think so. I didn't go with the Obscura because it's so early. If I were hunting down here now, which I'm planning on doing in the coming weeks before season ends, things are getting greener. There's way more green in the landscape. I'm going to wear Obscura every single time because it's green.
Even in the south where it's been greening up quite a bit, like that March and April turkey season, that Obscura will work really well. You know,
the first time I wore the Obscura in a green environment, I was with, I don't remember, it might have been Brandon Mason. Might have been you. No, because you don't. No, I don't remember who I was with. Doesn't matter. But who I was with was wearing it, and I was wearing the Highlander.
It was Brandon.
And I looked back, and I had to where's Brandon? Yep. And he turned and looked, and then I could see his face. He just disappeared in that stuff, and he was 20 yards from me. It's just unbelievable. So I love the Kryptek stuff. Man, Leupold Performance Eyewear. I'm stoked. They've got a new lens coming out called the Twilight Max lens, and it's going to perform across a broad array of lighting conditions. Yes. Where when it's really bright out, I love that dark charcoal gray lens. But for everything else, especially all the fly fishing that I do, that brown lens is probably my go-to. And so I'm really excited to try the Twilight Max because it's like one lens and it's going to get darker and lighter with lighting conditions. At least that's the way I understand it. Yep. And so I love the fit and the feel and the performance of those. You know, when we're sitting in a blind, it's pretty dark in there, and I tend not to have sunglasses on. But when I'm running and gunning, man, you said you brought something
really light sensitive.
Yeah.
So I'm really light sensitive. Like I'm light sensitive to begin with because of my eye color, but then you add on that I wear contacts, and that makes you even more light sensitive. And I have heard that some guys who've had LASIK tend to be a little bit more light sensitive as well.
It hasn't bothered me. Hasn't bothered me, but my daughter has blue eyes, and she's very light sensitive. So I think that's interesting. But running and gunning, I've always got them with me, and I always have a hood, and I'll put them on my hat, and some like a tight-fitting hood. I just make sure my hood's over them, so if a bird comes in, he's not seeing them, and they're hidden. I love that. And dude, the Weatherby Sorex shotguns, I have put them through the paces from last November on ducks and geese. We took them to Nebraska to hunt snow geese with them, and then turkey hunting. And they've been phenomenal. They pattern great.
This was my my first chance to get out and shoot them, and actually I've owned a Weatherby Element for a really long time. I had that 18i that we had in for a very long time, so I've shot quite a few Weatherby shotguns over time, and this one is the best that I've used. I've really enjoyed it.
Yeah, man. Everybody that picks one up goes, whoa. You know, our guide. So we had the outfitter on the hunt, J.D. Stenzel, and then he had brought in a guide, Kyle Lassley. And they still turn us loose and let us do whatever we want. They're not holding our hands, but it was the option, you know. And Kyle picked that gun up, and he killed a bird with the Sorex, and he'd never touched one before. And he goes, "Holy smokes, man!" He just picked it up, and he's like, "I really like the way that thing feels." And we did put the Leupold Delta Point Pro red dots on them. And I really like a red dot for turkeys. In the past, I've kind of not really worried about it, but this year I went back to one.
Yeah.
Phenomenal. I really, really like the way it shoots.
This was the first turkey I've killed off of one.
Well, and what we need to do is you and I need to go out and make sure that you didn't flinch.
We'll tell that story in a second.
We'll get to that story.
We might have to do a part 2 on the podcast. Either me eat crow or just admit that
dude, if you haven't missed a turkey, I've been hunting long enough.
That's true.
I mean, I've missed them. Everybody I've ever hunted with has missed them. Yep. You think, oh, you're shooting a shotgun. How could you miss? But when you get them inside of 15 yards, your pattern's pretty small. Yep. In the heat of the moment,
it's not much bigger than the baseball.
Well, it's bigger than that, but it's tight.
So when we looked at that turkey I shot last year, this is going to sound really grotesque, but this is more good stuff about the TSS, is that you could see on the top of his skull where it was carved out. When you go pattern a gun, and you could see it's this section, where it's just completely the top of his head was gone.
I'm pretty sure you domed him with the flight control wad. I'm pretty sure. That's
I know that hit him. We could see it on film.
Holy smokes! But we didn't have anything like that. But I'm stoked to you do some interesting things with your birds differently than I do. I'm stoked to put the birds through. I'm going to brine a bird in some of the High Mountain Seasonings brine. And I'm really excited to do that. But guys, we can't bring this content to you without paying some bills and giving some shout outs. And it's just part of the game. I'm very blessed to firmly like the people behind the brands that support us. And I'm firmly blessed to be involved with good brands. The products that we talk about on here are good products.
Yes.
And I honestly feel like if one of the sales team was coming to me like, hey, what do you think of this? And I truly didn't like the product, I wouldn't take it.
Yeah.
Because it's like, no, because I can't honestly tell listeners of the podcasts or viewers of the videos that this is a great product when it's not. And I'm just wired that way. And so everything that we talk about are top level products and they work across the board. So guys, there's our sponsor shout outs. If this ends up being at the beginning of the podcast, great. If we space them out and put them through in editing, I'm great with whatever, but I wanted to get those knocked out and get them out of the way. So, Scott, let's talk turkey, man. Scott killed it. A large part of what Scott does here at Eastmans, and not so much on the Wingmen side of things, but definitely with Eastmans. It is starting, is to find outfitters. And find people that are looking for hunts in the West and match them with an outfitter that's going to be suitable. But why don't you explain that more?
So here's a story we've started been telling people as this has developed, because this isn't something Eastmans has done historically. It's pretty new within the last 3 years about. So what happened was I got off the phone with a guy, kind of reminded me about my dad's age in his 60s, and he had 15 or 16 elk points in Wyoming. He's like, where should I go? I want to do a horseback hunt,
Right.
and help me find this hunt. This is a big deal. I've never done this, and I really want to know where to spend my money. And I'm sitting there thinking, if I'm going to ask him to spend $10,000 or $11,000 with an outfitter, I want to really know that outfitter.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't want to just anecdotally say, well, this guy's the gold standard here.
And then he has a bad experience.
Yeah.
He comes back and he blames you.
Yep.
Yeah.
So what Ike and I started working on was building a program where we had a system to vet outfitters, get to spend time with outfitters, and be able to help. We know we've got a DIY crowd. We know we've got a very
huge.
strong contingent of it.
Including us.
I
mean, we all love to
most
DIY.
of the hunting that we do as a crew is DIY.
Absolutely.
However, there is a place for the outfitter.
100%.
And so when and there are people who are going to use the outfitter a lot. And it's not just, it's that whole it's the rich guys thing to go. And that's not always the case. Mm-hmm. I know a lot of people who they save their money and use the outfitters because they have limited time. And that's a big piece of the equation. Or they have some very specific goals.
Right.
Some very goal-oriented people use outfitters on a regular basis. So that said, we wanted to build a program where we could help our subscribers, our listeners, our viewers all find the hunt that they want when they're really looking for either once-in-a-lifetime experience or they want just help planning it.
Yeah.
And so what happened, what really started propelling some of this was our really good friend Rod Paschke in Montana. He had a guide that had gone away. He had some kids and wanted to, hey, I can't guide in the fall. I can't be gone for a month and a half, so I really need to spend some time there. Well, he's also a rancher, and he hadn't been outfitting. JD had been doing the DIY thing all over Montana himself, and some friends of his come to him and say, hey, we don't have time in the fall to outfit this or to manage the people asking for permission.
Right.
Would you mind coming here and managing our deer for us? If you want to outfit, that's fine. And
we're setting. I'm letting you set this up to explain how we ended up turkey hunting.
Exactly. Up there. Yeah, because it's all Wingman. I don't want to bore you with boring deer stories, but it tells the whole story of how we ended up here. And so. What happened next was the first year JD operated under Rod's license and we were able to film a whitetail hunt, which I got to go on, and so did Brandon Mason. I ended up killing a very nice whitetail buck up there that I got a lot of history with because I got to go during archery season and come back and rifle to really finish out a TV show and put that on Eastman's Hunting TV. But if you go watch that show on YouTube, you'll see that there's a bunch of turkeys running around.
A bunch of turkeys.
And I'm sitting up in the tree stand, and I text Todd. I'm like, Todd, there are a ton of turkeys up here. And if you've ever met Todd, you know that he is our paid skeptic. And
I can be. It's that Polish side of me. That's really?
And he says, well, are you sure? And I'm like, dude, wait till you see the footage. And so it took me 4 or 5 months, and Todd's like, okay, we'll go up there. And I had talked to JD because he's like, well, I'd like to make the most of my leases, and I'd like to do this. And I said, JD, if just based on numbers of turkeys there and the low pressure, you have a phenomenal hunt that a lot of people aren't able to do.
Well, it's hard too because you're hunting there in November,
mm-hmm.
and I know turkey behavior, and I'm thinking just because they're there in November doesn't mean they're going to be there in May or late April when the season opens, because they spread out.
Yep.
Anyway. Last year, we went up there for the first time.
And that video's on YouTube. Yep. But the thing that keeps them there is it's agriculture. And so there's a lot of feed. And so the birds may rotate out and shift out because that entire river bottom, because JD has access to multiple places on the river bottom. And it was a phenomenal hunt last year.
It was incredible.
And this year was right up there. The birds weren't quite as aggressive as last year, but it didn't matter. We killed 4 birds in 2.5 days.
Yeah, and we went later in the season, and I knew going in, and we talked about it on the ride up, that we're going to see different turkey behavior than we saw last year. Last year we went early, and spring was a little late last year, and it was cold. It was snowing the morning I shot my bird, the first morning of the hunt last year. Temperatures were cold, and we got there the first night, I preach in School of Strut that scouting is number 2. Patience is number 1. And we'll get into all of that, but the scouting is number 2. And we got there last year, and JD's like, what do you guys want to do? And I said, I want to scout. And I think I surprised him a little bit when I said when I didn't say I wanted to hunt. I said, I want to scout. I want to see the lay of the land. I want to see where the birds are. I want to look at this. I want to know how spooky they are, all of it. We pulled up to the first spot, and we could see it's probably 3/4 of a mile across that big field. And you could see down into the woods, and it's kind of open, and there's a couple grain bins there. There's some corrals, and it was just turkeys moving through under those cottonwoods in there, and they were running around fighting and beating each other up and chasing each other around. And it was at that moment that I was like, this is going to be epic. Because they were in dominance. They were still establishing dominance. They had not started breeding yet. And when you throw up a strutter decoy on birds like that, you get a show. And that is exactly what we got last 100%. Year. If you haven't seen the video from last year, the hunt from last year that we're talking about right now, it's on the Wingmen YouTube channel, guys. Go check it out. Incredible video. We had tried for 8 years to get turkey footage like that, and finally we did it. The fact of the matter is, turkey hunting on public land, I don't care if you're in the West or not, is getting more difficult all the time because there's more and more and more people clamoring over a very finite resource.
And where the population of hunters is not growing, the amount of public land or the amount of land where turkeys are using regularly is either changing or there's fewer. And you can see that in population trends.
Yes, 100%. And so when it comes to turkeys especially, I am a DIY guy. Get out of my way. I don't want it. Don't tell me what to do. Again, the stubborn pole lock comes out. and the great thing about JD was he is so good at reading people. And he can tell immediately, well, this isn't a hand-holding deal. These guys don't need to have somebody in the blind with them making sure that they're all
not going to shoot each other.
Or they can call birds it was like he just kind of sat back and was feeling it out. And to his credit, he was smart enough to go, this is the first time I've ever outfitted for turkeys. I want to learn.
And also to his credit, he may not be a dyed-in-the-wool turkey guy,
right?
But he has guides. He's got the birds, and he has a couple of guides
that are very good turkey hunters.
Derek has killed a lot of birds with his bow, and then Kyle helped him this year. Kyle also guides for rod as well,
right?
And Kyle's killed quite a few birds, and I was pretty impressed when he was pulling up all his videos and things because he's doing it on his own as well,
right? And when you're doing stuff, even if you are a guide. I personally, if I'm going to go with an outfitter or a guide, I want to see that guide is out doing the things that we are doing on his own in his spare time, because then I know I've got somebody that's passionate about this. And it's not just a paycheck to them. They're there and they do it because they love it. And they make a little money on doing it, while they're doing it. So that's great. So anyway, we came back from last year, and I believe we got in the truck to come home last year, and I looked at you and I said, Scott, nice job. Because you called it, man. You called it. You took a look at that resource and you went, let's just go try it. And then we talked JD into it, and we were like, dude, you have to sell these hunts. You have to sell these hunts. You have the best turkey hunting probably in Montana, if not some of the best turkey hunting across the West, period. I mean, guys, I've turkey hunted for 35 years. I've seen the good and the mediocre and the bad. And this is as good as it gets. So going into this year's hunt, we knew things were going to be different because we went later. Schedule, alignment, everything. The dates kept getting shifted further and further into May. And I was like, well, we may very well be hunting single gobblers and have to run and gun in the river bottom and have to get after these birds. It didn't turn out to be that. Birds were in much smaller groups, but they were still in groups. It wasn't the big mob of birds that we had last year. and gobblers were split off with a couple of hens, or there'd be a pair of gobblers with a couple hens, and then some random outlier birds here and there. Yeah. It was a ton of fun because what it did is it gave you the opportunity to be really flexible.
Yep.
Where if you screwed a situation up, you move on to the next. And there was another group over here. Whereas early in the seasons, and out west, this is what our birds do. They winter around feedlots where there's cows. And I'm not saying a commercial feedlot. It could be just a home pasture around somebody's place, around a rancher's place, where they've pulled all the cattle in for the winter and they're feeding them there. And those turkeys aren't dumb. That's where the food is. And so that's where they go. And that's where those birds spend the bulk of their, from probably I'd say November through March.
Mm-hmm.
And about the time seasons start to open, those birds are starting to drift away from that because there's food opportunities in other places. They need to spread out to breed, all those different things. And they start utilizing a much broader landscape.
Well, and protection from predators as well.
So the point I'm getting at with that is what we witnessed up there this year was not a group of birds all in one spot like last year, which makes them, honestly, can make your hunting a little trickier because you can, if there's 50 birds in a field and you call in a gobbler and you shoot him, you just educated 50 birds.
Yeah.
And even birds like JDs that don't see a lot of hunting pressure get smart quick.
Yep.
Whereas if you can hunt a pair of gobblers or 6 birds on a roost that are coming down and are doing their thing, and you can hunt those birds specifically, there's usually, we saw it. Mm-hmm. There were 15 or 20 groups like that spread out across the properties that JD has to hunt. So we could get more aggressive with those smaller groups, even to the point where we hunted later into the afternoon than what I would normally do, because it was like, well, we'll booger these ones, and there's other birds over here that we can shift to, and it was phenomenal. We did not see. I won't say we didn't see the aggression in the birds that we saw.
They were still ready to fight, but they just weren't bunched up in big groups. JD told us 2 days before, because he went down. He's got trail cameras up, like most whitetail and like most turkey. Yeah, he needs to know where they're at, and his place isn't right next to his lease, so he's not. He's got to come check on it. But he found he knows exactly where the birds are because he's been studying these places. You get to watch them in the fall, you get to watch them in the spring and see how they're traveling and transitioning. But he went down to one of his places that he has access to, and there were 40 birds in one field 2 days before we got there. And so our spring was a bit slow this year getting there. And so I think they split up like almost about the time we got there, because you go from 40 birds in one field to they were. And this is on the one property in particular where I traveled around while you and Kyle were sitting, and I found a couple birds in just about every property, but they're moving a bit more.
Right.
And so they're going in between cover, coming out in the field. You'd see 4 or 5 come up over the dike, into the cornfield to eat, and then they'd go back and just different things of that nature. So they were all there. It's just a matter of they weren't right all in the same spot that they were before.
Yep.
But like you said, I kind of like it. If we can time it next year when we go, if we can time it again, I liked what we did this year a little better than last year because we got it made it easier to move around. We got some different settings.
For hunting wise, it when all your birds are in one place, it can be epic like it was last year. We killed 3 gobblers in one day last year, and we never moved.
Yeah,
like literally, we moved the blind last year.
50 yards.
Well, it was further than that, but it wasn't far.
No.
And you shot your bird. We were in the blind for 15 minutes, and your bird came in. You shot him, called JD and Derek. They came down, and I sweet-talked Derek into jump because he's a bow hunter.
Yep.
He's like, I've never shot a bird with a shotgun.
First time for everything.
I was like, well, you're going to today. And anyway, twisted his arm, not too hard. He was game. And he jumped in, and a couple hours later, we'd killed his.
The beauty of it was, though, Derek still had a couple other tags in Montana because Montana has some – you can buy a general tag, but then there are also some region-specific tags that you can get as well.
And the beauty of where JD is it's in the general area. Mm-hmm. So you can buy that tag as a non-resident over the counter.
Yep.
You don't have to apply and maybe draw, maybe not. You make up your mind. You call JD, hey, I want to come turkey hunt. You book the hunt. You just buy the tag when you get out there. It's so easy. And, yeah, for guys looking to notch the Merriams in their slam list or guys that just love to hunt turkeys and want to travel, I mean, there's no better place to shoot a Merriams than where JD is. No better place. You know, it's like, well, why wouldn't you tout Wyoming a little more, Todd? That's your home state. And it's like, honestly, JD's got better hunting.
Yep.
If I thought there was better hunting someplace here in Wyoming, that's where I'd go. But after being there last year and again this year,
the
unequivocal endorsement.
The perspective that a lot of people have on Wyoming is they look and they see all this media that comes out on the Black Hills. And I'm not knocking the Black Hills. Please don't hear me as saying that. But like everything, there are ebbs and flows to wildlife populations. And a lot of what the Black Hills currently has as far as popularity is due to what it was 10 to 15 years ago.
I would agree with that. There was a definite dip about 5, maybe 6 years ago in their turkey numbers over there. And it's recovered now. Yeah. They have lots and lots of birds now.
Yep.
But it's popular.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it was a popular destination when I started hunting it years and years ago. I remember when I was a teacher over there, little tiny podunk town, and I go downtown something on my lunch break to grab something at the hardware store I needed. And there's a Hunter Specialties pickup rig parked out front. And I don't remember who it was. It was some famous turkey celebrity was in the hardware store. And I was like, holy smokes. And it kind of dawned on me then, like, I'm kind of in a mecca spot for turkey hunting. And it's still really, really good. But, man, if I had to pick, part of it is I've done it. I've hunted over there for so many years that I like going other places.
I'm getting off on a tangent. What I would really like to do is I'd like to go to JD's next year, and then I'd like to buy one of the region-specific tags where we can have some mountains in the background.
Yep.
And then I would like to maybe have some property lined up here in one of our river bottoms in like our Bighorn Basin.
You know what?
Like almost do a tour.
You know what's funny is I have a hankering to shoot a bird in the mountains in grizzly country here.
Yeah.
And there's not very many birds.
No, there's not.
I went for a big long walk last weekend and I never saw a feather, a track, a poot, scat. They're a here bird. I mean, they're really spread out in the mountains, but there's some. And schedule being what it is, being a busy dad, it makes it more difficult to get out and just run and gun looking for those birds. But there's so many old logging roads and stuff where I've seen birds in the summer or in the fall that I'm like, I know they're here. It'd be fun to get up early in the morning and just go drive and listen or walk some of those roads. Just that little extra edginess that you might walk around a corner and come face to face with a grizz.
I really don't want to have to put TSS number 9s into a
but I tell you what,
bear.
Another endorsement for Federal Premium. Holy smokes. I have no doubt that it would do the job at close range, but I don't want to find that out firsthand either. So I just have a hankering to try that. Maybe I will. We've still got some season left. Yeah. The cool thing is bear season's open here, and I may throw the rifle and the shotgun in the truck and just go tool around. When I find an opportunity while I'm looking for bears, great. The cool thing is bear hunting is usually an afternoon, evening endeavor, so I got all morning to look for birds.
Yeah, it'd be fun. I want to do, I don't know, I've got several different ideas in my mind, but they all start with starting up at JD's place, because we know usually most turkey hunts with an outfitter are 2 to 3 days. So if you and I could figure out a plan where we can hit JD, then do something, Dakotas, and then come back.
Kind of make a loop.
Yes.
I would love to try to carve out the time to do that.
Yeah,
and
it's hard.
That's the hard part, honestly. Another thing about JD's that just crossed my mind is the food.
Oh, yeah.
You tease me about being a foodie.
There's no teasing. You just are.
I don't see myself that way, but obviously, look at me. I like food.
And never trust a skinny guy to cook your food either.
Well, JD's meals are prepared by in large part by admittedly by his wife. And, dude, we ate the very first night in camp, we had home-raised tomahawk steaks.
And
with
they weren't
branding beans, with salad, with, I don't know, there was fried potatoes and onions and mushrooms, too.
And those were the thickest steaks that I have.
I mean,
I've ever
I
eaten.
wouldn't be surprised if they were 2 inches thick.
Yeah, somewhere between 1.5 inches and 2 inches thick.
They were huge. Yep. When Scott Reekers can't finish his steak, that's saying something.
I had to stop.
Yeah, well, none of us finished our steaks, and I can throw down on beef, dude. I mean, you put me in, you and I could put a dent in a beef quarter.
There may be a story hanging out there somewhere of Todd shutting down an all-you-can-eat buffet in Cody, Wyoming.
It's a prime rib buffet, and I got a little carried away. It was one time.
Just a little bit carried away.
Anyway, yeah, the food is outstanding, and there's every night, I found myself about 6:30 in the evening looking forward to the meal at the end of the night, and yeah, it was just phenomenal. The whole experience is just super cool. It's a ton of fun, but I want to transition from pimping JD's, operation, which is deserved, to talking about the actual hunts that we did. And I want to talk about each individual hunt because we killed 4 gobblers and
a little bit different circumstances on each one.
Yeah, and I would have really liked to shoot one run and gun style out of the blind because with my kids, so the weekend before that, I took my 2 girls out and they doubled on a pair of jakes that came into the decoys, and they had a goal set, man. We're going to shoot gobblers this year, Dad. Well, they couldn't hold off when the jakes showed up, and it was like, okay, my youngest daughter, my middle child goes, Jake, these 2 jakes are just working the jake decoy. And she goes, Dad, I'm going to shoot the one with the longest beard. Well, his beard's like 3 inches long. This is a stub. And I looked at her and was like, they're both jakes. She goes, I don't care. Okay, we're doing this. And, she killed a bird. She killed a jake last year, and my oldest daughter killed her first bird last year as well, and she killed a mature gobbler, but he had beard rot, and he had just a little tiny stub of a beard. It stuck out just enough out of his feathers where you could see it. And because in Wyoming, birds have to have a visible beard to be legal. And I looked at this bird for 3 days, and I'm watching him and watching him and watching him. He's strutting and gobbling. I'm like, that's a mature gobbler. He's got a full fan. Got a strong gobble, but I cannot see a beard. Well, then finally I got on the scouting. He walked by. I was just sitting in my pickup looking at him because I didn't want to disturb him. And he strutted by the truck, and he kind of broke strut and looked around, and I could see that little stump of a beard sticking out. And I was like, okay, he's legal. And sure enough, we set up on him the next morning, and she killed him. And she's like, I want to shoot one with a beard this year, Dad. So anyway, long story short, my girls did not show any restraint whatsoever, and they smoked both those jakes.
They had fun.
And it was a ton of fun. Ton of fun. I would do it again tomorrow. And I filmed it. I didn't film it for like a hunt necessarily. I just filmed it to get the harvests on camera and to have more of the memory. I remember I didn't film either of theirs last year because I wanted the first hunts to be my entire focus to be on them. So I didn't film them. This year I did. And I played with some GoPro angles. And holy smokes, did I learn on where to put a GoPro. Instead of putting it 10 yards off to the right of the decoy spread, I put it literally right in the decoys, facing right at the blind. It completely changes the way things look. And you
can learn a lot from it, too, on their behavior.
And we did. And I'm going to get to that, Scott, because that's a really good point, because we did see very different turkey behavior than what we saw last year. Last year was 100% dominance. We saw a little bit of dominance this year mixed with breeding behavior. And I'm going to get into that here in a second. Let's talk about my bird first, just because I want to do it chronological order, and I was up to bat first. We got set up, got to JD's. He's like, what do you guys want to do, scout or hunt? And this year, knowing what I knew from last year and what conversations we had, I'm like, let's hunt. He'd already done the scouting. We knew what the birds were doing. I said, let's hunt. So we went out, and honestly, I didn't want to sit in the blind. But field edges, filming, I said, you know what? Let's put the blind up. Let's get in the blind. Let's get one dead on camera, and then we can play. get the work obligation done. And that sounds terrible to put it that way, but it's the reality of what we do. We cannot bring content to our viewers and listeners if we're not being successful in the field. And so you got to do it. So I went whole hog and put out a goose spread with turkey decoys because I was like, I can always dial it back. Yep. I put out a strutter, a stand-up hen, the lay-down hen, and the jake. I put the jake and the stand-up hen off to the side, and I put the strutter with the lay-down hen right in front of the blind at like 15 yards. I said, let's see what they want. We weren't there, probably an hour.
Yeah, the first group was a half hour, 45 minutes. It wasn't long.
It didn't take real. It felt a little longer, but it didn't take long. And it
felt long because we had, we'd been in the car for 6 hours.
That's true. We've been sitting on our butts for 6 hours. But anyway, just some calling, blind calling, yelps, some cuts, nothing. And then all of a sudden I looked over out the side window and here comes a bird down the earthen embankment. And came right into the decoys, and there ended up being 4 of them. And I just didn't feel like shooting any of them. There was one that was definitely a jake, but the other 3 were kind of like, are those 2-year-olds or are those jakes? I couldn't tell. Their fans it was really windy too. And so their feathers were blowing around, and their beards didn't blow my hair back. Not that I have any, but they didn't knock my socks off, I'll put it that way. Yeah, my hair.
Beard hair. Your own beard hair.
But I just wasn't feeling it. I was like, Scott, we've been in the blind for 30 minutes or 45 minutes. I don't want to do it right yet.
Okay, so I also have to say this out loud.
Go ahead.
You admitted in the blind that was the first time you have ever passed.
No, and I think I'm wrong about that.
Okay.
I think I can think of some times where I have passed birds, but it was always because there was a specific bird I was hunting.
Okay, fair enough.
But in a situation like we were in up there, I don't pass turkeys, dude. It's like that bird comes in and it's a gobbler, I'm shooting it.
I mean, if you go back to one of the earlier episodes in the Black Hills you and I did together, I was filming, and again, per usual, you were up to bat first, and so we had played with a couple different gobblers, kind of run and gun, chasing around, and we get set down. So you're on a pine tree to my right. I'm, tripod all covered up, and we were really hoping that this was our year to get a bird to come in and just smack that decoy. We got in there early enough. No, this nice gobbler comes in, and you see it spurs, and I'm so focused on the camera, I'm not like evaluating the bird. I'm just staying on the bird. I did not expect you to shoot because we were going for getting it close and it's smacking the decoy. And I see you lean forward. I'm like, oh, here it goes, and you just hammered it. So I mean,
I get a little trigger happy on turkeys. There's no doubt about it. I don't know, man. I like shooting them and I like eating them. I like everything about them, but this year, those birds just didn't feel right. There was something that was like, I don't know, man. I want to wait. Part of it is where we were.
Yeah.
I was like, I want to enjoy this, man. I've spent since last year. I've spent an entire year thinking about doing this again, and I want it to be over really fast.
Yep.
And so let them walk off, and they did not work the decoys at all.
No.
The one bird stuck his head through the fan of the strutter, looked around, and then they just folded their wings and then fed away. And I thought, okay, that was interesting behavior. Maybe it's because they were young. I don't know. They were definitely young birds. I don't know. They just weren't in that. I don't know. Didn't pull the trigger. You're kind of looking at me like, what are you doing? And after about another hour and a half, I'm starting to second guess my decision a little bit, going, I may have screwed up.
And the part, though, that had us thinking that was we had birds to our left and to our right
that didn't
and
want
they weren't
anything
they wanted
to
nothing
do with
to do
us.
it. They weren't responding, and so that leads you to second guessing pretty quick.
Yep. I immediately when the next group of birds, there were 3 gobblers that came out to our left and 1 came out to the right, and all they wanted to do was feed. They wouldn't gobble. They weren't strutting. They were just feeding, and I was like, oh boy, our behavior is way different this year.
Yeah.
And that right there told me there's going to be windows when these birds are hot and windows when they are completely shut off.
Yep.
Which makes it, if you can find a bird when he's hot, it can be great. But it wasn't like the year before when
They
were always
nuts.
hot. And, it was boiling. Even a bird that was feeding, it was just under the surface. Like, I think back to Derek's bird, those 3 gobblers came out, and they were just feeding. Not interested, and it wasn't until I got aggressive and real janky on the call with some aggressive yelps and purrs and cuts that I got the mature bird to gobble, the dominant bird to gobble. And then I just kept ramping him up, kept talking to him, ramping him up, and pretty soon he couldn't handle it. And he came over, and it was a show.
Yep.
But anyway, I was kind of an hour and a half in or 2 hours into the sit the first day we were there this year. I was like, oh boy, we might have to work for this a little bit harder, which is fine. That's more rewarding in the long run. But what happened was I just kept talking on the call. Not
every 20 minutes.
Aggressive, just, hey, we're here. There's a party over here. It's a chill party, but it's kind of a backyard, beer drinking party. It's chill. You're sitting by the fire, hanging out, eating hot dogs, chilling. It's not aggressive. It's an easy place to come hang out. And I just kept painting that picture, and all of a sudden, all the birds just kind of went back in the grass and disappeared. And I thought, okay. And it wasn't 30 minutes later, we could hear behind us. And I looked at you, I'm like, there's a gobbler right behind the blind. And we had the back windows blacked out so you couldn't see him, but he was right behind the blind. And all of a sudden I can hear grass moving.
And I was hearing the same on my side at the same time.
And those 3 hens, I had 1 on my side and 2 on your side, and they split the blind. And I literally, we both could have reached out and grabbed one by the neck. They were that close to the blind. And you hear...
And let's pause and talk a second about blind placement, because what we did is there's this dike that you could drive on, and JD Quick dropped us off there, but where he stopped was right next to an old H post.
Yep.
And so what naturally happened is they didn't think twice because there was human activity at a place where there's normally human activity. And so placing a blind there did not look like anything out of the ordinary. That's the beauty of hunting on agriculture. You can get away with things like that. Whereas if it felt out of place somewhere else, even on unpressured birds, it could have caused some problems.
Yeah, and turkeys are notoriously naive of blinds, but you still don't want to surprise them.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Because they will react weird to them.
It looked like part of the fence.
It did. It wasn't anything that was out. It was kind of like, they obviously didn't pay any attention to it because they walked right by it.
This episode's brought to you by Federal Premium Ammunition. I've been shooting Federal for a lot of years, guys, and I can't say enough good things about them. Everything from the TSS Black Cloud loads to the Blue Box Steel, and now the heavy bismuth loads that they have, and of course the traditional tried and true Black Cloud FS steel. They got a load for everything. Last year I had a chance to put some of the new stuff through the paces, and I cannot speak highly enough about it. It swats birds out of the sky, gives me awesome patterns, and with the new heavy bismuth, I can use some of my old shotguns in the field as well and not have to sacrifice performance. So guys, when you reach for shells this year, reach for Federal Premium.
Well, when those hens came out and went right in front of us, they kind of went over and investigated the decoys. Like, well, this is interesting. My calling into decoys had kept them curious. And they got their food, and they're like, well, let's just swing by the Joneses' place on the way back home and see what they're up to. Us being the Joneses. And, I knew what was going to happen. It was like, these gobblers are going to follow those hens right across in front of us. And at one point, we had a gobbler 3 feet from the blind, like looking in the window practically. Yep. And we're both sitting there like stone statues. Don't look, don't breathe, just be quiet and still. And they walked across, and the last bird in line had a nice, thick, big rope and had good spurs. And I told you I'm going to shoot the last one. And he walked across in front of me, and they did not interact with the decoys. The one bird kind of strutted a little bit, but they didn't pay any attention.
Yep.
And so got it, walked to the right. You're like, I'm on him. And so I shot him. And I was thinking to myself, I was excited. I was glad we got a bird. We got some beautiful pictures. It was a great-looking bird. Cool experience to have birds that close to the blind, but I'm like, okay, this is going to be a little tougher than last year. And the next morning, you were up to bat. We went in knowing where the birds were likely to roost. We went in, set the blind up, and the birds are already hammering on the limb. And we're several hundred yards away. No danger of us. And we're in, again, to your point, your previous point, we were by some corrals. Those birds are used to people coming and going from there, and so it wasn't a big deal. And we just sat and waited. But those birds came down off the roost, and it was like fight night over there. And I was like, okay, here we go. Two birds started working, and they're following hens, and I leaned on those birds hard with the call. I mean, aggressive with my calling, and they saw, and decoy strategy that morning. I put the strutter away. I even put him back in our truck because I was like, we're not going to use a strutter.
Zero interest.
So I just put out the lay down hen with Jake, and that was the ticket. Once they looked over, and between the aggressive calling and that Jake decoy, it was game on. But what I found really interesting is when the birds that on your hunt, when they decoyed, the more dominant bird bred the lay down hen. And the less dominant bird fought the Jake decoy the entire time. My Jake decoy took an absolute butt kicking on this trip.
Well, I feel
by
sorry.
turkeys and by Scott Reekers, and we'll get to that in a second. This is the funniest thing. So, I don't know. We'll let the camera run for 10 minutes.
We had, close to 20 minutes.
Because I want to film turkey behavior at this point. And it was so interesting to watch. Like, I wouldn't put a black light on that hen decoy. It'd be gross. So
you went there.
Yeah. It was amazing to watch that. And I was like, okay, Scott, do it. The hard part was they won't separate enough to give you a shot.
And I had one specific. I felt like he was a little bit better bird than the other. They were sixes,
similar.
but he was a little bit better. His beard was a little bit better, a little bit bigger bodied.
I'd agree.
And so I was going to wait because there was no reason not to wait for him to just give me a shot. Now, I'm going to tell what from my eye.
Do it, and then I'll
what
tell
happened.
Go ahead, and then I'll tell the truth.
I'm going to tell the truth. So, a couple things. This is another interesting note for any of you young guys thinking about using a blind. Couple things you have to consider. First off, I'm not going to knock our blind because I really like it. But one thing I really
it's old.
It is old.
It's an old blind.
One thing I really like about the Ameristep that I've got is it opens up. And it does not have bars across the way it's situated. It just opens up different. So I do like that. But the blind we had, there are some bars. So just consider that as you're sitting in a blind in the store and thinking about what your activity is going to be. Really look at where the placement is because there are different ways that where it sets up. It'll make life easier or harder.
Right.
So with that in mind. I'm sitting on a stool, and just where they ended up, I had one of the bars there. So if I pushed, there's not an excuse. It's just a consideration. Okay, Todd's giving me this is an excuse. So you've got that. That's one piece of the equation. But then we've got two birds. They stayed tight.
Yeah,
like they stayed
were
really
shoulder
tight.
To shoulder the whole time.
And so worst nightmare of a turkey hunter when you don't have two tags in your pocket is shooting two birds. And especially when you're filming, so I had to wait for them to give some separation or get some disinterest. They were not getting disinterested in those hens.
I don't know how long we just sat there.
Yeah.
They were locked into those decoys.
And they were going to stay just as long as it took. So they finally separated a little bit, but he was staying in full strut. And I didn't want to shoot him in full strut. I wanted to.
He was facing you.
He was, And so I didn't want to blow him up, basically, is what really was going to happen.
Because at 15 yards with Federal 3-inch 9s TSS, I don't care if they're in full strut or not. You're going to smoke that bird.
So my intent was, let him get his head up. But and I'm watching through the red dot. I see him stick his head forward, and you can see this on the GoPro.
Oh, yeah.
And so he sticks his head forward, and that's when I pull the trigger and I don't know if I got just partial of him or what, but that decoy took a beating. I thought I didn't hit him at all.
Center punched the decoy. I thought at first I thought you body shot him because that's what it looked like. But what happened is when we went back and reviewed the GoPro footage, and So he jumped up and he was like, what was that? And he didn't go very far.
He gobbled.
Yeah, and they stopped. That's the cool thing about a blind with decoys. And you let them get so intent on what they're doing with decoys that a shotgun doesn't seem to bother them too much. They're like, but they almost don't want to leave. Yeah. And so anyway, they kind of jumped out of the frame of the GoPro, which big deal, you know.
Yeah.
And put the gun on him, second shot, and you smoked him. Perfect shot. And I was kind of like, So we reviewed the GoPro footage back at the house at lunch, and dude, I think we all peed our pants just a little bit.
Yeah.
We were laughing so
It's
hard.
one of the funniest things I've seen in a long time.
Scott absolutely executed my Dave Smith Jake decoy. I mean, hammered it. And all I can think is when you listen to you retell that, when that bird put his head down, he must have been either in line with the decoy and through the red dot, the decoy you hammered the decoy.
If it was low, I can see either of those being plausible because we haven't watched the big camera footage actually.
No, we haven't, and that'll tell more than the GoPro. But the best part was those birds were fairly close together. And when you shot the decoy, it spun it, and the tail hit one bird, and the head hit the other bird. And I know for a fact they thought that decoy came to life and attacked them because they were like.
And then my bird gobbled, and then he started moving away, but he went half strut again just to walk away. Then he stuck his head up, and that's when I smoked him.
Yep. It's the beauty of hunting turkeys, especially unpressured birds, but birds that are, when they totally get focused on something, that their focus is on that. And I mean, we could have done calisthenics in that blind, dude, and they wouldn't have cared.
Yeah.
And that's the perfect scenario for kids when you've got kids moving around, and it works out really, really well. I've said this a million times. I think that hunting turkeys out of a blind is probably the most effective way I've ever hunted turkeys. Yes. I'm not saying it's the most effective way. For me, in agricultural situations, it's been the most effective way with decoys, hands down.
Yep.
It's my least favorite way.
Yes.
Because it's sitting and waiting. Now, the coolest part about it is you get to watch some amazing turkey behavior.
And you get a ton of grace, too. If you're going to hunt with kids,
oh man,
it's the way to do it. Whitetails and turkeys, this gives you a ton of grace to be able to take your kids out, have an enjoyable experience.
Yep.
You can also have some crazy experiences. Like I had a whitetail only doe tag, and my son stuck his head out of one of the windows as I am drawing, like to my left. So you can have some.
You never know what kids are going to do.
Exactly, but. I had a whitetail doe in range.
Yeah. I told my oldest after they killed their 2 birds this year, I said, okay, no more Jakes. You've each killed 2 You each killed 2 birds. Now we're going to focus on mature birds. And I told my oldest, I'm like, we're going to go run and gun. We're going to work birds without a blind because she's big enough now. She can hold the gun. You know, there were a lot of considerations where they couldn't hold the gun up, so it's on a bipod or a tripod locked into a bog death grip. To help them find success. Well, she's big enough now where it's like, we're going to hike, we're going to find birds, and we're going to do it, for lack of a better term, the real way. Anyway, I hate to throw out dividers in turkey hunting because it's like, dude, just get out, hunt birds, and have fun.
Yeah.
That's what turkey hunting should be. And that's how I see it. But there's certain ways, I mean, where it's I want to do it a certain way, and I want her to learn how to do it a certain way. Because honestly, if all you do is one style, you become a very you put yourself in a box. You pigeonhole yourself, and you become a very one-dimensional turkey hunter.
Well, and I'd like to go back to, just time hasn't worked out, but I'd like to go back to the Black Hills and remember that. You remember when we had those three toms? So that one really nice tom in that group. Those 3 toms that came up and would not cross the fence.
Yep.
Like I would love to go back to that spot and even if you and I do it again just for a redeeming moment because that was infuriating.
That was frustrating. Well, and I think we covered Our phones were telling us we had covered like 17 miles or something like that day.
Something stupid.
And it was a ton of fun.
Yeah.
I love doing that because it's rewarding when you trick a bird and it's just you and him out there in open air. Anyway, super cool experience. Whether you flat missed, whether the red dot got bumped, whether who knows?
Yeah.
But it doesn't matter. You redeemed yourself on the second shot. You killed the bird, and that was what was cool. And we have a funny story and some funny footage. To throw in a video.
It will be highly entertaining. And tell you what, the person who makes the funniest comment on the YouTube video when it comes out, we'll give you 1 year free of Eastman's Elite membership.
I love that. So there'll be a caption contest next spring on the turkey hunting video. So I'm going to hold you to that. And we're going to try to remember that for next year. But so then JD was up, and we prefaced this with JD's got tons and tons of birds, but he's not a turkey.
He's not a turkey hunter.
There's so many guys.
He is now.
Yeah, he is now.
Like, you got him addicted.
But there's so many guys out west that they look at turkeys kind of down the side of their nose a little bit, and where it's like, well, they're just a stupid turkey. And it's funny because we have some phenomenal turkey hunting out here.
We do.
And the people that know about it are kind of like, dude, this is awesome. And we try to kind of keep it under wraps a little bit. And on private, it's different because you got to get access. You got to go through an outfitter, whatever.
Yep.
But, public land spots everywhere, I don't care where you go, they're blown up, man. And the Black Hills are no different. And we were always super careful hunting over there. We hunted all public ground and DIY stuff, and I was always really cautious to not show what I thought were, like, identifying landmarks in the background while we were hunting. I mean, you go and take a picture of Devil's Tower with your bird, but
everybody knows those Black Hills in Wyoming.
Right? Yeah, exactly. But I don't want because I didn't want to blow up those public land spots. One, because I'm selfish and I want it for myself. Two, they're precious, man. They're a precious resource, and the more people flood into them, the worse and worse the hunting gets. And anyway, that's a whole rant for another time that I won't get into. But back to JD, just never really had an interest in shooting turkeys. Yep. He does now.
Oh, yeah.
And
like, he's bringing his daughter this weekend.
Well, the coolest part about it is he's got the birds. And he's smart enough guy and a humble enough guy to go, I don't know anything about hunting turkeys. I've got land that has a pile of turkeys on it. Hey, Derek, come. You want to work for me? You want to guide these turkey hunters? Because he goes and finds somebody that's a turkey assassin like Derek. Mm-hmm. That's obviously a great turkey hunter that can help the people. Yep. And if you roll, I'd have to imagine if you roll into JD's camp and you're obviously a very seasoned turkey hunter, he's gonna give you a lot of wiggle room.
Oh yeah,
where it's like, yeah, man, do your thing.
What'll happen is JD will JD and Derek and it sounds like Kyle's gonna keep doing some guiding for him too when he can. It's not a situation where it's a micromanage. No. They want you to have the experience that you're going to have. And I look at outfitters like this. It is their job to read you. Right. It is their job to spend the time with you that's necessary. And then it's also their job to make sure you get the best experience you possibly can.
I completely agree.
And JD's going to, JD's going to do that. He's got a lot of experience guiding. Like I said, he did a lot of guiding for Rod Paschke over at Sizzlin' S Outfitters, and now he's got his own outfit with Circle S Outfitters.
Right.
And so in doing all of this, he spent a lot of time with a lot of people, and he's done a lot of work to really get to know who his clients are, what their capabilities are. You should shoot first when you go to an outfitter. And every good outfitter worth their salt, I've gone to, they always test you on the gun, as they should. And sometimes it's not about you. Sometimes it's about, I did a 3-hour car ride on the way to another outfitter I worked with this year, and you know what? There was a lot of bumpy roads on that 3-hour car ride.
Well, that's just it.
So
you're low, especially guys, because it was a 6-hour drive for us.
Yep.
I would assume that a lot of JD's clients are going to come from further away than what we did. They're probably going to fly in and drive.
Yep.
And you need to shoot your gun when you get there.
100%.
If you have an optic. If you're just shooting a bare bead on your shotgun, okay.
Yep.
That's not going to get bumped off. But you need to shoot your gun if you're running an optic. Yeah. So anyway, next, you were in the morning. We went back, did the obligatory turkey nap.
Because you don't get a lot of sleep.
No.
Especially as far north.
Yep. Days are long, nights are short. Anyway, went out in the afternoon, and JD and I jumped in the blind. I was filming and calling. He was up to bat. He was excited. We got in the blind. He's like, "I've never done this, dude. I'm really excited about this." I'm like, good. And there was a bird down to our right in the trees that was being fickle. That was what we noticed this year. The midday activity was none.
No.
Those birds would not gobble in the middle of the day. They were holed up in the timber, and they were loafing, feeding in the timber, strutting, probably doing some breeding in the timber, but they were not hot during the middle of the day at all.
We're not.
I mean, you couldn't get them to gobble.
Nope. Made any attempts to run and gun pretty tough.
Yeah. Thank you, because you set that up perfectly, because I wanted to run and gun.
Yeah.
But it became apparent that it was like, we're just going to be pushing these birds. We're going to be spooking birds because they are not responsive.
Yep.
I mean, crow calls, hawk screams, and there's so much bird life on that river that they're bombarded with sound all the time. So getting these birds to shock gobble is really hard.
Yep.
And you could hen yelp, but we tried middle of the day and don't pay any attention. And I was like, you know what? It would be dumb for us to go wander around through the habitat, because it's a river bottom habitat. The only turkey habitat's about a mile wide.
Yep.
And that's really it. So you start shoving birds around, pretty soon they're on the neighbors where you can't hunt. Or they're across the river where you can't hunt.
Or they're on edge.
Yes. So we went with, let's slow roll this.
Yep.
Let's play it safe. Hunt out of the blind, low pressure. JD and I got in there, and I was just blind calling. Just yuck, 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 yuck. Every 20 minutes. Little sequence, and put the calls down. Finally, a bird fires off to our right down in the woods, and JD had already seen him. You could see his fan every now and then. I'm just like, I'm just going to keep talking, and maybe he'll come over here and see what it's all about. Because as we've talked about in other podcasts, a turkey hears you, he knows where you are.
Yeah.
And he will eventually, more than likely, come and investigate that. So back to tip number one, or rule number one from School of Strut, patience kills turkeys. Well, we sat in that blind that afternoon into the evening for hours.
Yep.
Knowing there's a bird 300 yards away. He's right over there, and he's either going to come or he's not. Well, finally, I hear JD go, there he is. And he walked out to the edge where he could see where my calling was coming from. And I went, yuck, 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 yuck. And he gobbles at me. Breaks into strut. I looked at JD, I'm like, here we go. Here he comes across the field. And I'd pared it down to just the Jake and the laydown hen. Very non-confrontational. He comes in, and he goes wide on the decoy. He didn't want to come directly to it. He was a little coy, which his behavior after this shocks me that he was as cautious as he was. And he stops at 53, and I'm ranging him with the Leupold BX4 range binos, just bink, 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 coming across. Because I could tell he wasn't quite committed. And I told JD, I was like, I'm following him with a camera, I'm ranging him, and I was like, he's in range. He's in range. You can kill him anytime here. He comes and he stops. And it was like decision time for this bird. You could see his wheels spinning, dude. And I told JD, I said, if he turns right or goes straight, shoot him. If he turns left, let him come. Okay, JD's on him. Bird turns left, comes right into the decoys. I was like, here we go. That bird throttled my decoy. He was trying to do the whole neck wrestling thing where they wrap their necks around each other. He was trying to do that to the decoy. He found a little crack in the neck of my Dave Smith decoy. Well, now it's a big tear because he about tore the head off my decoy. He got his beak in there and was yanking and twisting. you couldn't get him off the decoy.
Yep.
He was trying to physically kill that decoy. And he thought it was Jake's, and he was trying to kill it. It was I've never seen a turkey go from being meh to flat out choose violence and just try to get it done, dude. I've never seen a bird switch gears that fast. And when he finally committed, he was like, all right, I'm coming over there, and I mean business. He had no interest in the laydown hen. He wanted to kill what he perceived as that Jake. And, I mean, he tore the plastic on the decoy. It was unbelievable. And then so JD, I was like, all right, partner, I got all the footage I need. Whenever he gives you a shot, take him. And boom, and takes the landing gear right out from underneath this bird, dude. Shoots low
and slightly left.
Yeah, and bird goes down, hit extremely hard. It reminded me of when you shoot a bird with a bow and they do the whole swimming across the ground with their wings. He went 10 yards and stopped, and he was going to die right there. And I told JD, I'm like, shoot him again. And he pounded him, and it was game over. And he was so excited. We got done. He's like, I was shaking so hard. He's like, over a turkey. You know, he's a big game guy.
Yeah.
And he didn't expect to get all wound up over a turkey. And he's like, I'm hooked. He's like, I want to do that all the time now. I said, welcome to turkey hunting when it's done the right way. Yep. Like I've said for years, killing turkeys is easy. Hunting turkeys is not.
Yep. Have a 17 HMR or something of that nature and shoot a turkey from, distance. That's very doable, very easy.
And in a lot of Western states, you could shoot a rifle for turkeys. Personally, I think it's stupid. I think it's no fun in it, and it's dangerous. And I do not condone that type of hunting whatsoever. It's like, dude, the whole point of turkey hunting is tricking a bird.
Yep.
Get them in tight, make them completely fool them, and then deliver the coup de grace.
Bird hunting in general is get them close, shoot them in the face.
Well, decoying, bird hunting, absolutely. And so JD was hooked. Time for dinner. Another fabulous dinner with Circle S Outfitters. I think we had Indian tacos that night, and they were
the fry bread's pretty incredible.
Dude, his wife's fry bread is out of this world. Just unbelievable. Anyway, woke up again the next morning, went out, and we tried something stupid. There's an old golf cart on this property. And this
is Kyle's bird.
This is Kyle's bird. The fourth turkey. We're going to get Kyle a bird. I said, you know what? Those birds have been walking right past that old dilapidated golf cart that sits over there. I'm like, we should go sit in that golf cart and see if we can kill one on that golf cart. Well, why not? What do we have to lose? And it would have worked. But the birds had switched roosts that evening and flown across the river, and that's where they were. But we had a hen walk within 30 yards of that golf cart.
We had a couple roosters on our side.
Gobblers, you mean?
Yeah.
We had roosters, too.
We had roosters,
He has a ton of pheasants.
Yes.
Holy smokes.
And he does not offer that as a hunt yet.
Yeah, that might turn into something later on.
But we had a hen come by at 15 yards, and there was a gobbler that had started in the same area where I heard her first.
Yeah, and he got hung up somewhere. He probably stayed with another hen or stayed in the woods. Yeah. I think it was the gobbler JD ended up, or no, because it was afterwards. There were two gobblers of JD's bird. I think it was one of those.
I'm betting it's the one that JD's going to go after, because JD sent me some cell phone or some camera pictures.
Yeah.
That, it's there. There's one with a really nice bird. I hope his daughter.
I do
really
too.
Nice beard that I hope he kills.
I do too. So Kyle and I sat there. You filmed. We put the blind up behind it, and you filmed out of the blind. And it would have worked if the birds had been there. No doubt in my mind. And maybe next year we try the golf cart thing, because I really now that we know we could, I want to shoot a bird out of that golf cart.
Golf cart is what's happening first. Well, and little fun fact here's what I really think we should do now that I've had some time on
gobblers.
Yes, golf cart gobblers. If they'll let us, it would be really cool to kill 2 or 3 of them right out of that golf cart on several places. So we're gonna have to get a trailer. But
the golf cart doesn't run.
It doesn't run.
It just sits there, and it's not light. I mean, we'd have to hand load it.
Todd, you moved it by yourself.
Well,
but anyway, so what I really want to do is Rod Paschke's going to come hunt with us next year.
Yeah, that'd be fun.
And if you haven't listened, if you want to find out about a good time, Rod Paschke's a lot of fun to hang out with.
Yeah.
And I've spent time around him personally, but
that's Sizzlin' S Outfitters.
Yeah, Sizzlin' S Outfitters. He's the one that mentored JD, taught him a lot about outfitting, was kind enough to let him that first year so JD could get his foot in the door, get an episode filmed to help him show what he had to the world. So all that said, Rod's coming up next year. And we have officially dubbed this thing the Wingmen Week.
Wingmen Week.
At Wingmen Week at Circle S Outfitters.
Yeah.
So I'm really excited to go do that, but I think we might need to have Rod be first on the gun.
Yeah, I think so too. But back to Kyle's bird. So it didn't work. The golf cart gobbler thing didn't work out in the morning. So we bagged it. We tried some run and gun that day, and it became apparent that it was like, dude, we're trying to push a rope.
Yep.
This just isn't going to happen. And so bagged it, went ate lunch, took a big nap. Took care of some other work responsibilities that we had to do while we were up there, and went out again in the afternoon and kind of just hunted a travel corridor, basically. Yep. We didn't see any birds in there that morning, but again, scouting is number 2.
Yep.
And the best thing is when whoever I was with in the blind, the other 2 guys were scouting. While we were doing this, they were running around looking to see where there were birds and what
all
they were doing.
Work that Kyle and I had done the day before while you were hunting with JD, I had patterned those birds and I'd identified a couple pinch points.
And you did a great job. So, you were like, there's, this is the pinch point. This is where they're coming through. And in hindsight, where we stood and JD shot at that coyote, that's where you put the blind.
Yeah.
Because they come right through that little spot. Yep. Now we know, right?
Yeah.
Anyway, we had a pretty fair idea. We put the blind up. Let's come back to it. Kyle and I got in the blind. It was another long afternoon sit with nothing except lots of deer and pheasants. Finally, bird gobbles, and I was like, here we go. He gobbles again on his own. I call. He gobbles back, a little closer. All of a sudden, there he is in the other end of the field.
Yep.
And another bird gobbles behind him. 3 hens come in the field, and then the dominant gobbler comes in behind him. And this dude is a stud.
Man on a mission.
He was amazing. It was amazing. And this is – so we saw so much cool turkey behavior, but this was incredible to watch. And, again, it's on GoPro and the big camera. And it's amazing to watch because the dominant bird was with the hens.
Yep.
The bird that was gobbling – was the one that came, and he came on, I won't say a dead run across the field, but he didn't dawdle because he saw the Jake, and whether or not he could see the lay-down hen or not.
Yeah.
And these decoys are postured in a way that it's a breeding posture.
Yep.
And so that birds can read that body language from a long ways off. So here he comes. Gobbles a couple times, struts, but he doesn't waste much time. And he walks in. He gets about 3/4 of the way in to the decoy, and the dominant gobbler, who had stayed across the field with the hens, sees what's going on and takes off across the field doing the old fat man shuffle. And here he comes full strut as fast as he can without breaking strut across the field. His head is white. I mean white, and he is on a mission. First bird comes in, comes past the GoPro, starts bellying up to the Jake, kind of sizing things up, and then like a freight train, the dominant gobbler blows past the GoPro. Right as he comes into the frame, he pops into hard strut, spits, drums, and does a wing drag right in front of the GoPro, kicks up dirt, his feathers rattle, and he goes around the Jake. He whaps the Jake decoy with his wing, pivots around, and drop kicks the other gobbler. Not in one motion, but close.
It was pretty impressive.
Literally drop kicks this bird out of the way.
He was in prime Jackie Chan form.
Oh, he was mad. He was fired up to breed, and he knew. And it was like, don't you forget who the man is here? I got to remind you, so I'm gonna kick you in the head to remind you who I am. He boots this other bird out of the way and immediately covers the laydown hen. Gets on her and covers her with his wings, and you can't see her. He stayed on top of that laydown hen for 10 minutes. While the other bird is trying to breed the Jake. They weren't fighting. He wouldn't want to fight the Jake. He was so sexually frustrated that he's like, I mean, the whole pelvic thrust. I mean, he had the whole thing going, dude. And it was crazy to watch, Scott.
Yeah.
It was amazing to watch. And I was just like, holy smokes. Well, while this is all going on, I look over at Kyle, and Kyle's kind of got a little mullet. He's young.
Yeah.
Kyle's a young guy. I look over, and his mullet is vibrating, dude. His leg is jackhammering. He's shaking. And I was like, and I'm telling this to a big game guide. I'm like, breathe. He's like, oh, yeah, I forgot. He's like, dude, I am shaking so bad. I don't know if I could shoot this bird. And I'm laughing. Anyway, we get some of that footage, and I distracted him. I was like, give me your phone. So he reaches his pocket, and I film him with his own phone shaking like a leaf, you know. And anyway, same thing. Birds won't separate.
Yep.
Finally, the big gobbler that Kyle ended up killing, the dominant gobbler, had enough.
Yep.
And he started to strut off. Problem was he wouldn't break strut, and he's walking dead away from us. So I start calling to him like, hey, I'm not done with you. And he turns around, comes right back. He did that twice. The third time, Kyle got the shot he was looking for. It was full strut, but the bird was kind of quartered to him, so you had the full view of the head, and he just hammered that bird. And that was it. That was our fourth bird. And, dude, phenomenal hunt. It was an amazing time. I won't say there was any magic to the calling or the decoy placement. I mean, once we figured out that Strutter needed to go live in the truck, that was the only adjustment we made, other than not being able to run and gun. It was kind of like, yeah, that would be fun to do, but it just wasn't going to happen. And knowing enough to go, okay, this is how these birds are behaving. We have to hunt travel corridors.
Yep.
Because I talk about this in School of Strut too. The best way to hunt a turkey is to get where he's going.
Yep.
And let him naturally come by you, because it makes it easier for you to call him over to you.
And I'm going to say something controversial. The best elk hunters I know do the same thing with bull elk.
Isn't that funny? We have an ongoing.
It's a battle here.
It's a battle here, and turkey hunting's a lot like elk hunting. Elk hunting's a lot like turkey hunting, and while they are no way, shape, or form the same, there are
similarities.
Very amazing similarities between the two animals.
Similarities and strategy for hunting them.
Right. Yeah, they're not the same. I won't say they're the same, but yeah, elk guys in particular get really fired up when you start comparing elk to turkeys.
Yeah. In fact, if you want to fire somebody up, find John Gabriel on social and tell him that turkeys are better.
Yeah.
And just see what happens.
And it's
really
not
fun.
about it. And it's not about which one's better. It's just guys that do both. Yep. There's some very similar things in their behavior and in their and in how you hunt them, like you said. So anyway, we could sit here and talk about this forever, but we've got not only do we have another meeting that we've got to go to, we've been hammering on this topic for a while, but it was a ton of fun.
Yep.
I feel like, I enjoy hunting with you, especially turkeys. It's just kind of it's become our thing.
It is our thing.
And I really enjoy it. I look forward to it. I'm excited to get out and hunt around here now that we're home, hunt the tail end of the season here, and hopefully get my wife a bird. It'd be really cool, but we'll see. It's been a phenomenal turkey season. I'm super stoked to show you guys listening to this the video for this next year, because it is different than what we did last year. But the turkey footage we got this year, honestly, I think is every bit as good as last year's. It's different. Last year's the harvest shots were just through the roof good.
Yep.
And the aggressive turkey interaction was good, but this year it was just a little different.
Yeah.
And oh my goodness, ton of fun. Guys, I cannot recommend JD Stensland and Circle S Outfitters enough. First class operation. It's full disclosure, it's not a fancy lodge.
No.
You're not staying in a fancy lodge, but you're going to be it's an old ranch house.
Yep.
It's dry, it's warm, it's clean. There's a shower, there's toilets.
You're going to eat well.
You have comfortable beds to sleep in. The food is phenomenal, and JD runs a first-class operation.
Yes, he does.
And the most important part of it is he has ridiculously good turkey hunting.
Yep. You can literally spend all day turkey hunting if you want to.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. You know, that's not my thing anymore. I like to take a nap in the middle of the day. It's part of it. It's like, man, we were up at 2:30 or 3 o'clock. We didn't go to bed till midnight. I need a nap, you know, and we can do that. If you want to stay out from daylight till dark, okay, you can do that too, but you probably won't need to. No. Anyway, super cool. Scott, always a pleasure having you on the podcast. Guys, thanks for listening to another episode of the Wingmen Podcast. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel and leave us a comment and a rating. That helps us immensely with the algorithm. If the algorithm feels like people aren't interacting with the content, it won't serve it and you won't get these. When you comment, when you rate us, when you give us a thumbs up, it automatically tells the algorithm that this content is important, and it helps push that into people's feeds so we can continue to bring you awesome conversations like this one. So thank you to all of our fine sponsors. Check them all out, guys. Again, it's Federal, Weatherby, High Mountain Seasonings, and Leupold, and Kryptek. Phenomenal groups of people there, phenomenal products. Anyway, guys, until next time, we'll see you in the field.